I'm Rachel Editon.
And I'm Miles Stokes.
And we're the hosts of Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men, a weekly podcast all about the ins, outs, and retcons of our favorite superhero soap opera.
We're also the hosts of Rachel and Miles Review the X-Men.
Which you're watching right now.
Where we talk about the X-books that come out each week.
Now, welcome back. I missed you last week. Katie did a very good job filling in, but she does not quite have your lustrous cascading curls.
We all have flaws, but yes, thanks, Katie. No, it's really good to be back. PAX Prime was fun. I met some listeners. I re-met some other listeners, and that was really cool. And I am really glad to be home and sleeping in my own bed again.
So with that in mind, shall we dive into the books of September 2nd, 2015?
Let's do it.
First up, we've got X-Men 92 Infinite Comic number 8, written by Chad Bowers and Chris Sims, drawn by Scott Koblish, and colored by Matt Milla. This is the final issue, or rather the final digital installment of the series. The final print issue, in which it'll ultimately appear, is number 4, which comes out later this month, 2 digital installments per print issue. Now, obviously we're biased as hell. I will repeat, if you missed the first 7 conflict of interest disclaimers about this book, that it's co-written by my best friend, and we briefly appear as characters in it, so obviously, we have some biases here. But, God, it's so good! It is so good, and this is such a good conclusion to what has been just universally such a strong series.
And one of the things I like about the way it concludes, okay, so I really want to spoil the big climax. I'm not going to, but I really want to.
Like, to the point that we specifically took it off of the panel of the week options list because it would have been a spoiler. Like, That's how serious we are about that.
But I will say that the two, I guess, big climaxes in this book embody everything that was the 90s beautifully, perfectly, and, well, I would say concisely, but 90s, so not exactly that.
Well, we make fun of the 90s a lot. They're kind of the collective whipping boy of comics nostalgia. And I think one of the things that gets lost in those discussions of excess is that excess has its moments and it has its purposes. And sometimes there's a story beat that just really needs to be dialed up to 11. And man, those sensibilities did it really, really well. And they do it really, really well here. Chris and Chad and Scott and Matt just do such an amazing, amazing job of getting that sense of just ridiculous up and up and up and up, triumph and conflict. And it's funny and it's fun. And God, I really like this book. I really, really like this book.
Me too. It also ends with X-Men 92 will return, so...
Fingers crossed.
Okay. Oh, and also with 2 epilogues. This is some Return of the King stuff going on here.
Yeah. Oh, I also did appreciate that we had that the Cyclops had a "they're not lasers" moment.
Yes.
I kind of collect those as a personal thing.
Also, he had a "move it, people" moment, which is like the ultimate animated series Cyclops line for me.
More than stand down, Wolverine?
Oh yeah, move it, people. It's all about move it, people.
Interesting.
There are 2 kinds of people in the world. One are stand down Wolverine people, one are move it, people. Yeah, it's a mixed marriage. It's fine. Second is the second issue of House of M, written by Dennis Hopeless and Cullen Bunn, with art by Marco Fela and colors by Matt Wilson. And yeah, once again, we have a really good issue based on a really, in my opinion, mediocre event. An event, by the way, that I also blame for starting the modern glut of events and crossovers after we were so blessedly free of them for so long. But what can you do?
Okay, let's be fair. There's a lot to dislike about the original House of M.
There kind of is. But one thing I enjoy about this, there are a number of things, and we'll get to those. One thing I really enjoy is that I think by virtue of focusing on mutants as largely the main characters, in a way the original crossover didn't, since, it was about half Avengers book, half X-Men books, whatever, we have more interesting mutants, perhaps a little less sympathetic as we see them more in the spotlight ruling this world, and more interesting human characters as well. They're more the underdogs, and by virtue of not being the main characters, by virtue of fighting the main characters, I think a lot more cool stuff comes out.
This series in general, I think, has a lot more focus than the original event does, just by virtue of being a mini-series that starts in medias res, by virtue of what it is, rather than the event that House of M was. House of M had to lead to the conclusion of the destruction of the world, the unraveling of that universe. This doesn't necessarily. That's going on in another book. That's going on in Secret Wars. It's going on to an extent in a couple other titles, but not in this one. This one can just sort of play in the world that's been set up, and that leaves a much, much richer background and a much, much richer environment and setting for stories.
Yeah, you have a single focused story here that just has to sell 1 book a month. It doesn't have to sell like 20 House of M branded books a month. So it feels really tight in a way I'm really enjoying. One thing I also totally dig Hopeless and with the second issue Bunn doing is I'm loving the characterization of a lot of the characters, like Wolverine as sort of a martinet working for Magneto and being all like formal and rules enforcing and stuff. It's a totally different take on the character. It's a great one. Polaris as a super spoiled, arrogant princess who uses like elevated language and talking about how terrible her flunkies are. It's great.
Quicksilver and Namor in the same room, thereby creating a singularity of snark within that particular universe.
I'm pretty sure that's actually what's going to end Battleworld, is just this snark singularity. It's just going to like devour it all and then have one little pithy one-liner and then the whole world's over.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So another thing I really enjoyed about this, I went back and forth on whether to mention this. It could, I guess, be conceived of as a spoiler, so sort of spoiler warning. Fin Fang Foom just shows up out of nowhere, and that's one of the things I really want in my Secret Wars books.
Fin Fang Foom showing up out of nowhere?
Well, that would be pretty awesome, actually. But specifically, sure, why not moments. I mean, this is a collection of worlds where everything is just sort of crammed together, and yes, the battle worlds are all separate, but they're all different than we remembered them from the realities they were originally based on. They are, some of them mishmashed together a little bit. And so if you want to have a giant green dragon wearing purple pants just sort of show up in your mutant run utopia dystopia, you can just do that. He can just appear. So thank you, Secret Wars, for that. I missed Fin Fang Foom, and here he is, thrown randomly into House of M. Awesome.
Next up is Age of Apocalypse number 3, written by Fabian Nicieza, with art by Gerardo Sandoval and colors by David Curiel. Man, I want to like this book so much more than I do. The stuff he said about House of M, about taking an originally sort of weak and poorly fleshed out world and event and making it into a really tight miniseries, kind of feels like the exact opposite of what's going on in Age of Apocalypse. This was a really well realized, really interesting world that the original event threw us into, and here, there just doesn't seem to be any room for it.
Yeah, which is interesting because Nicieza was one of the people at the center of the original Age of Apocalypse back in the 90s.
That might be the problem, honestly. The original Age of Apocalypse was new, and there was a lot of introduction. There was a lot of world building there that's just absent here. I mean, it feels, to me at least, like a writer who's so familiar with his world, but he forgets that the readers aren't necessarily. And that's context and setting that we get to a great extent in other books, definitely in titles like House of M, and here, there's just not much setting. I mean, that's true in the art as well. Sandoval is again doing a great Joe Mad, but part of what that means is that he's really light on background. There are characters big and front and center and yelling, taking up 3/4 of the panel, and there's just no real sense of space or again, setting.
It's a shame. One thing I will say about one of those characters, though, is that in this issue we get further evidence, in my opinion, of my theory that Burner is really Adam X the Extreme.
You make a pretty good case for it, yeah.
And I'm just saying, I would forgive this book a lot if Adam X was a character in it, because why would you not have the 90s character in the 90s book? I mean, why?
Well, here's the problem. If he is a character in it, he is missing a lot of the things that I feel like kind of define Adam X as a person and as a signature character of the 90s, like his crappy backwards baseball cap, his weird Fred Durst hair, and his ubiquitous skateboard. Without those, is he really still Adam X the Extreme, or is he simply Adam X?
Oh, good point. Why are you so much less extreme, Adam? What happened to you, man? What happened to you?
Apocalypse happens.
Speaking of Apocalypse, I want to talk about one thing I really enjoyed about this, which is what I liked about the original AOA, one of the many things I liked about it, which is lots of scenes of villains scheming and backstabbing with each other. I feel like that was an integral part of Age of Apocalypse, with the various horsemen being all schemy and having weird teeth and stuff, Sinister and Abyss and Dark Beast and all of them, and we get a fair bit of that, and that's pretty rad. That part I just unabashedly enjoyed.
See, I spent a lot of that part being frustrated by Dr. Nemesis, but I can see where you're coming from.
If it's not Cy Spurrier writing Dr. Nemesis, it's never going to be as good.
That's true, but, maybe they should just bring him in to write Dr. Nemesis whenever it comes up. I feel like that would be a reasonable move, would be a reasonable approach.
Finally, we have Star-Lord and Kitty Pryde, number 3, written by Sam Humphries, with art by Alti Firmansaya and colors by Jessica Colleen. I was surprised to find this is actually the last issue of the series. It's only a 3-issue miniseries, which you don't see a lot of, but it's the perfect length. It's a complete story, and damn is it charming.
Yeah, it's tight.
It keeps the same vibe as the previous 2 issues that we were talking about. I keep bringing it up as a very Disney book, and in this issue, I think it's even more so. I mean, yes, there's some violence and stuff, but it still feels very, very lightweight and very cheerful and shiny. And, as far as a rom-com about a lounge singer, former space buccaneer dude, and an alternate universe darkety assassin clone of a spunky teenage girl, I don't know how you could do it better.
She's a clone?
Well, as in she's from a different universe. You
That's
know
not,
what I mean.
clone means something, man.
Yes, well. But yeah, I mean, Gambit the Collector, I still love Gambit as the Collector, it totally works, is largely the antagonist here, and he's great. He's charming and sleazy and easily outwitted by our clever heroes, which is everything a Disney-style villain should be. We have, once again, a Widget and a bunch of little weird continuity stuff that you don't need to know, but if you do, the book becomes even more charming. And we have an ending that totally works, complete with Kitty sort of walking on air off into the distance as Peter Quill, looks on with his heart all aflutter.
You mentioned the Disney feel, and I think a huge amount of that, even more than the writing, is from Saya and Colleen on the art.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've got that airy, very, 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 very classic Disney sort of feel and proportions to the characters and faces. And I mean, you talked about that with regards to Kitty, but I saw it much, much more in the way Peter's drawn in his facial expressions.
I can totally see that, yeah. I mean, it's this very cartoony, slightly goofy, but endearing facial structure. Everyone's very expressive, him especially. I mean, he's certainly the more emotional of the two characters. And it's great. It's only a 3-issue series. I know it's a complete story, still kind of wanted more, and I gotta say I've never been a big Star-Lord fan. I haven't been too interested in Kitty Pryde being on the new Guardians of the Galaxy. This book has pushed me a little more in the direction of both. So that's it, 4 books. Rachel, which one's our favorite?
Our pick of this week is X-Men 92 Infinite Comic number 8. It is a really strong end to a series that's been really consistently strong and emblematic of a lot of what we've loved about this title. What's our panel of the week?
I'm going to have to choose this one right here from Star-Lord and Kitty Pryde number 3. Firstly, because I think it's sort of emblematic of the sense of humor of the book, of like really serious stuff and really goofy stuff mixed together. I mean, look at the dialogue, look at the badass art. And secondly, because, hey, look, it's Thunderstrike. Who remembers Thunderstrike? They remembered Thunderstrike. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching.
If you like what you've seen here, please check out our podcast, Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men. New episodes go up every Sunday at rachelandmiles.com, also on iTunes and Stitcher. What have we got for them this week?
I was at PAX. I don't know. You did it.
Right, yes. This week was just me, and I interviewed Robert N. Skier, who is one of the co-creators, co-authors of the series Bible from X-Men Evolution. Now that podcast, these video reviews, and everything at rachelandmiles.com are brought to you courtesy of our Rad Patreon subscribers. We are an entirely ad-free and listener-supported project, and if you want to join the fine folks who make that possible, you can do that at the link either above or below this video, depending on where you're watching it.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of things you can watch or attend, we are going to be at Rose City Comic Con in Portland, Oregon later this month.
Right, it is September, so we're going to be talking about this non-stop for the next few weeks. We are, among other things, we're going to be tabling there. We're on a bunch of panels, and one of them, at 5 o'clock Saturday, September 19th, is our first ever completely live episode. We are recording episode 76 live at Rose City Comic Con. You should come, you should be there. It's going to be great. It's got, I think, by far and away our most ambitious topic ever. Mm-hmm. A really amazing panel of surprise guests who will be a surprise, but we assure you that they are splendid. We've also got some other stuff going on after hours.
We're going to have a big meetup. We had a small one at Emerald City Comic Con this last time around. This time we're going to be at a place called The Steep and Thorny Way to Heaven. That's going to be after the show, and you can find details at our website, rachelandmiles.com.
Right, that's Saturday night at 8. And yeah, one of the things we heard from a lot of the folks at Emerald City is that they would love to have something that would be open to folks who couldn't attend the show for whatever reason, so didn't have badges. So yeah, we're doing a big off-site meetup and party this year. Again, details over at rachelandmiles.com. Hopefully we'll see you there. I
could be like the prodigy guy.
Standard.
Okay.
Can lean into the window and just fall out of the screen.